Fred and his wife, Karen, visit Fred's mother at the hospital. The doctor explains his mother's condition to them, but Fred doesn't understand and asks the doctor to explain it in a simplified manner. The doctor states that things aren't going back to the way they were, and there isn't hope for his mother's memory to return. Afterward, Fred goes for an interview and reminisces about his mother playing with him. He gets a new job as a data analyst, and his life is finally on the right path. On his way to work, there is traffic, and he decides to take a shortcut through the alley. He stops the car to receive a call from Karen, but there is no service. A homeless man comes toward him and scares him, causing him to have flashes of a girl named Cindy asking for help. He wakes up all alone in the alley. He is unable to sleep at night. He ponders on his flashes and tries to sketch out the lady he saw. He brings out his college yearbook and identifies the girl as Cindy Williams. He remembers her from high school. Karen snaps him out of his trance and wonders what he is doing in the middle of the night. But Fred doesn't tell her about his visions. At work, Fred continues to sketch Cindy during his meeting. He decides to visit his high school and meets with the librarian. She tells him that he borrowed a book in his senior year and he did not return it. Fred is surprised at how she remembers that. The librarian informs him that she remembers Sydney as she did not show up for the final exams. Fred tries to look for her in the school system, but she is not there because she did not graduate. It turns out Cindy went missing after students started using the drug, mercury. Later on, Freddie remembers watching Cindy talk with a boy. At home, Fred tells Karen that he went to see the librarian at school because he was feeling nostalgic, lying to her again. Karen asks him to pick a color for their bathroom. He picks the purple colors and has flashes of Cindy's tattoo being purple. Fred remembers sitting behind Cindy during a test in high school, staring at her tattoo. He imagines Cindy touching his face, and he goes to the bathroom. While he looks at the writings on the wall, two boys come in and exchange drugs, and one of them looks like the homeless man he saw in the alley. Fred wakes up and sketches out the man he saw. Fred continues to have memories of a boy and figures out that he said, "I'm in your lobby." He assumes someone is in the lobby. He picks up a stick and goes to the lobby. After realizing that there is no one there, he decides to leave but has flashbacks again. He falls to the ground and he sees Cindy and other people around her. Cindy asks him to stay with her, while he hears other voices saying that he should fight. Fred wakes up on the floor in the elevator. The next day, Fred and Karen visit his mother. While he continues to sketch the images of his memories, he sees some old drawings and his pictures and finds a picture of him with Sebastian. He has a flashback of Sebastian giving him some drugs to hide as Sebastian is being investigated. But no one would suspect Fred. Fred leaves that hospital and tells Karen that his mother doesn't know who he is. Fred reconnects with Sebastian at a bar. He asks him if Sebastian has heard from Cindy since graduation, but Sebastian tells him that he has forgotten about her. Fred confesses that he has flashes of them with Cindy when they were high on mercury and asks him if he remembers what happened to her. Sebastian states that he did not remember a thing when high on mercury. He tells Fred that he remembers the first time they took mercury, causing Fred to have a flashback again. He remembers being in class when someone throws a paper at him. The paper tells him to go to the door, and he does. Sebastian introduces him to Cindy and Andre and asks for the drugs. Fred returns the mercury, and Sebastian gives him mercury as a reward. Fred admits that he hasn't taken mercury before, even though he smokes a lot, and Cindy tells him to stop talking. Fred feels reluctant to use it, but Cindy tells him to make his choice. Fred uses the drug and begins to hallucinate. He wakes up to the laughs of his friends. Although he has blurry visions, he follows Cindy, who likes to explore while on drugs. He passes out on the effects of the drugs. Back at home, Karen tries to make love to him, but he turns her down. He apologizes and says that his mind is wandering. Karen sees his sketches and asks if he is drawing again, but he lies and tells her that it's just illustrations. Karen worries about him. The next morning, Fred visits Sebastian and meets Andre in his house. Fred asks Andre if he heard of Cindy or her friend, and Andre tells him no. Sebastian tells Fred not to worry about Cindy, stating she is fine. While Sebastian leaves to attend to answer his mother's calls, Fred confesses to Andre that he is having flashbacks about how he thinks something bad happened to Cindy while they were high, but they don't remember. Andre asks Fred a weird question about studying for their final exams, even though they are no longer in high school. However, this causes Fred to have a flashback. Fred recalls being high in Sebastian's house with Andre when Cindy and Sebastian enter. The four go to a club, but Fred is not allowed due to his age. Cindy rescues him and takes him to the roof of the club. They both get high on mercury, and Fred tells Cindy that she only exists when he is high on the drug, as they never have a conversation when normal. Fred asks her why it was important for her to explore, and Cindy tells him that she doesn't want to be like the rest. She tells Fred that she does not want to be confined to a self-made prison like the rest of the world. Fred asks how they can break free. Cindy says they have to remember the power of choice, and he has to live in the moment. Cindy and Fred return to the club, and Sebastian asks if he would like to take pure mercury. He further states this is where it all begins. Fred wakes up from his flashback after being interrupted by his boss at work. She asks him if he is ready for his presentations tomorrow. She tells him that he is having a lack of focus, and he has been late 3 times in the month. While she talks, Sebastian keeps calling Fred. She tells him that he has to be ready for his presentations tomorrow, and Fred leaves her office. He calls Sebastian, and Sebastian tells him that he remembers everything. Soon after, Fred meets with Sebastian and Andre. Sebastian believes it started before their final exams when some guy tells him that they can get pure mercury. Andre insists that he can't remember the party. Fred asks if Cindy was at the party with them, but no one remembers. Fred believes they will remember what happened that night by retracing their steps. He closes his eyes and remembers that they went to an old building. Andre remembers that the building was on Blackbird Street, and they decide to go there, despite Karen asking Fred about work through a text message. When they get to the building, Fred rushes and enters, even though Andre thinks that they have no reason to go in. When they search the house, Fred finds the room where it all started. Andre is too scared to enter. Fred tells them to stay outside and enters the room. He flashes back into the moment when the 4 of them were at the party. Fred becomes uncomfortable at the party and tells Cindy to leave with him, but Sebastian brings pure mercury while they talk. Sebastian and Cindy take the drug, but Fred goes to the bathroom to use the drug. While leaving, he sees Andre, who warns him not to take the drug. Andre tells Fred that bums are all over the place and the drug isn't what they think it is. Andre starts bleeding. He panics and runs out. While Fred goes back to the room, he sees the burns, Cindy and the boy from his visions all high on mercury, the boy saying random words. Fred snaps out of his flashbacks and sees the homeless man, some scary looking people, and Cindy. They tell him that they never left, and Cindy whispers, "He is still here," into his ears. Fred flashes back and sees the burns. Cindy arrives and tells him that it is okay. Fred tells her that he saw his older self. The bums reveal that the past and present are happening simultaneously, and he should concentrate on his experience in the place. He tries to concentrate and continues to jump between the present and the past. He snaps out of the flashback, and Cindy tells him that this is only one of her lives. She adds that she has one set of choices and she exists in all of them simultaneously, as she is freer than he can imagine. She tells him that she has seen the skylines of 1,000 cities, looked into the eyes of hundreds of grandkids, even the ones that look like him, and she asks him to come with her, as she will show him all the possibilities. Fred continues to have visions and cannot differentiate between the past, present, and future. He flashes between the small and homeless man, communicating simultaneously. They tell him that there is an invasive life form that controls their consciousness, and the substance he ingested temporarily counteracts the influence of the invasive life form that is trying to force him to perceive information. Disoriented, Fred hits the boy's face with a lamp, causing a scar on his face. His friends enter the room and drag him out. Simultaneously, his wife tries to wake him up, Fred snaps out of the flashes and realizes that he is late for his presentations. He sees a key on the table and goes back to the past. His mother scolds him for what happened yesterday and tells him that she doesn't know who he is. Fred transits between the final exams and his presentations. Fred notices that Sydney did not come for the exams. Concurrently, his boss asks him to make his presentations. He starts hallucinating. Merging the past and the present, Fred starts talking to himself, stating that he knows he is in a prison. He scatters their rooms and says that he didn't choose the lives and he is not here right now. Fred snaps out of the flashes and realizes that he is preparing his papers for the presentation. He calls Sebastian and his mother tells him never to come around his son. Fred travels back to the day of the final exams and asks Sebastian if he has seen Cindy or knows where she lives. Sebastian asks him why he cares so much. Fred finally understands that he can travel through multiple timelines. He simultaneously travels between different timelines and meets Cindy in the abandoned house. He goes back in time and falls in love with Cindy in different timelines. He decides to travel multiple timelines with Cindy. Fred transitions between different lives, exploring each of them with Cindy. In a timeline, Fred decides to visit his mother at the hospital and tells her that he is her son, but she does not remember her. Fred realizes that the mouth he sees in his flashbacks is his mother trying to warn him. He is happy as his mother finally recognizes him in all timelines. After exploring different lives and universes with Cindy and meeting his mother, Fred realizes that he can travel with Cindy and tells her. He returns to his original timeline, where he writes his final exams and meets Karen. Fred's presentation is a success, and Fred with his wife decide to buy her their dream house. The movie ends with Fred reconnecting with his mother, and she finally recognizes him. She hugs him, and Fred recalls when she hugged him as a kid. Well, that is all for this video. I hope you liked it. Subscribe to our channel and make sure to like this video if you want to see more of us and help the channel grow. Also, comment if you want us to recap your favorite movie. Thanks for watching, and we will see you next time.